All right. Welcome back. It is the Wednesday edition of First Take Live, wherever you're tuning in across Ontario. Thank you and good evening for your time. We've only got about a half hour left on this particular segment. I'm going to ask Donnie, there's the website right there, rositahull.com. Her phone number is there also. If you are a meeting planner, somebody that is looking for a dynamite speaker, she is outstanding, motivational, a lot of fun. I know that you'll really enjoy it. Also, her book is now available. You can get this through her website, and I would suggest that it is a great tool to be able to also have on your bedside stand in your briefcase, and then if you're a traveler, put it in your briefcase and make sure you travel with it. Again, Rosita, thank you very much for being here. It's so great to be here with you tonight. A big part of what a lot of people are going through right at this particular time, and you've heard it in a lot of the audiences you're talking about, the workforce is getting smaller, so those that are left, there's major changes happening in their organization. Some people are taking on extra responsibilities. Some people are taking on jobs they've never done. Some people are having middle management or management that is putting extra pressures on them at this particular time. You know, human beings, first and foremost, we have a really hard time with change, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So how can we embrace change and be able to deal with some of these issues that I've mentioned in our workplace?
I think the prerequisite to change management is self-management. And also, I think that you really can't manage the change, but what you can manage is your response to the change. So when I go in and do change sessions, I always talk about the fact that we need to do the prerequisite first. If you're going to do any kind of change, we've got to look at ourselves. You know, what is it? And we have to ask ourselves, why am I responding this way? Why am I having a difficult time with this change? And a lot of times it has to do with people not really understanding, again, we get back to that mask, who they are and why they're responding that way to the change. And a lot of times people are just not taking the time to take care of themselves. One of the first things that happens when we go through a lot of change and movement in the workplace, and I've been there when we've gone through changes and challenges, is that people will sacrifice their health. That's the first thing to go. And once you sacrifice your health, guess what? Everything's bugging you.
Right.
I haven't slept lately. I'm not eating properly. I'm probably putting in more hours because I think if I put in more hours, maybe the boss might keep me, you know, other than the other people. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. You know, everybody's agitating me. You get irritable because you're not getting your sleep. So I always say, okay, first thing we're going to do is we're going to get people starting to take better care of themselves, because people just dive in and they're scared and they're threatened and maybe I'll lose my job. And then you see a lot of tension in the office because people who were at one time best friends are now like this with each other, because everybody's just feeling the pressure of the changes and the challenges that are going on. But here's the reality, Dan. Change is all there is. I mean, it's all that there is right now. Anything that's not changing is dying, and that means inside the workplace, at home, outside the workplace. This is just the reality of the 21st century. This is just the reality of life, is that change is always going to happen. So I'm always telling people, why don't you try and get ahead of the change? Instead of just waiting for change to happen, why don't you get ahead of it? Why don't we become more innovative? Why don't we become more creative? Why don't we go to the boss and say, here's some ideas that I have, before the boss says these are what the changes are going to be? And I also encourage, from an institutional point of view or organizational point of view, I always say to the people at the top, you know what, you got to make people a part of this as well, because when people are a part of it, they accept it a little bit better than to have people just come in and say, oh, we're making these changes. But at the same time, I think it goes back to the self-esteem thing again, and how do you feel about yourself. You have to go into the workplace and say, here's some ideas that I have. You got to stay ahead of the game.
When you do the training aspect in a work, is there, when you're talking about change, is there one for management, one for
yes, there is. Absolutely.
The individuals?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And when you look at change about management, and then you look at your frontline workers, and I'll call them frontline workers,
sure.
Is there also a component that not only is embracing change in the workplace, but to be truly successful, do you have to get them to a comfort zone where they can accept change in their personal life?
Oh, absolutely.
And what comes first?
You know, I think you have to work on both. I mean, you really do. And Dan, change is huge. I'll give you a situation that I walk into workplaces. I walk into workplaces and there's all kinds of changes and challenges going in. People haven't been sleeping. People haven't been eating. People are going through issues at home because there's job losses. Right. People are going through maybe a separation or divorce. People like me are going through menopause, you know, and so you're telling me to deal with all these changes in the workplace, and I still have all this stuff outside the workplace that I'm dealing with. So when I go in and do workshops, I make sure that we're covering all those issues, because it's not helpful for the frontline people for me to go in and say, these are all things you should be doing with change, when nothing's been dealt with on the outside. Because you may solve what's going on in the workplace, but you're going to come back the next day feeling the exact same way, because you got so much stuff happening on the outside. And a lot of times, just those very simple things When people make a connection with that because they're going, geez, I didn't know. I bet you just this menopause. This is why I'm having such a bad time at work and I'm not dealing with things well. You know what? My son's raising heck at home. And you know, he's supposed to be in university and he's not. No wonder I'm not dealing well with this. I got this to deal with. So I think you have to make sure that you incorporate all the aspects that are going on in a person's life. And I make sure, when part of my presentations, I have people fill a questionnaire. So I want to know before I come in, what are the issues, what's going on in the organization so that I touch on all of them. I'm not just going to come in and say, okay, let's embrace change if I haven't dealt with what's going on in people's personal lives and what's going on in the workplace, what's going on with the relationships in the workplace. It's huge. It's absolutely huge.
I